Israel Keyes was like a total predator hiding right there in plain sight. A killer with no clear pattern, no limits, and honestly, almost zero remorse. He moved fast, quiet, and all across the country, leaving behind this trail of completely shattered lives. His victims? Just random people, ordinary folks who had no idea they were about to walk right into one of his carefully planned nightmares. From Alaska all the way to Vermont, he secretly buried these so-called kill kits in remote, empty places, just so he could come back years later and, carry out his twisted, devilish plans. And when he finally struck, he thrived in the chaos and fear he created. And get this, even after they caught him, he still got some sick satisfaction out of it, playing mind games with the investigators while coldly confessing to his crimes. But how the hell did Israel Keyes manage to get away with his messed up crimes for so long? What were his real motives? And honestly, will we ever truly understand the full scale of the horror he unleashed? Hey everyone, welcome to Detective Daniel. This is the place where every case has a face and every crime tells its own story. I'm just starting out on this journey, so I'd really love it if you guys could drop a comment below and tell me what story you'd like to hear next and, what I could change to make my videos more enjoyable for you. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and let's get started. So, today's story takes us to this small town in the northeastern part of the United States, and yeah, we're talking about Essex, Vermont. I gotta say, Essex has this perfect mix of small-town charm and modern comfort. With a population of around 22,000 people, it's small enough that you kinda know every corner, but not so quiet that it ever feels boring. Just a few minutes away from Burlington, Essex is actually the second largest municipality in Vermont. Still, despite being so close to the city, it totally has its own unique vibe. Right here, you've got the Champlain Valley Exposition. That's where they host everything from county fairs to concerts. And then there's the Essex Experience, this super cool combo of shops, restaurants, and cultural events. Oh, and judging by Google Maps, there are tons of nice coffee spots all over town. If you're more of an outdoorsy type, you definitely won't be disappointed either. There are almost 600 acres of gorgeous nature waiting for you at the Indian Brooktown Conservation Area, plus all those trails over in Saxon Hills. The town's history actually dates all the way back to 1763, when the land was granted through New Hampshire charters. Since then, it's grown from a tiny settlement into a thriving little community. So yeah, whether you're strolling through the charming Harriet Farnsworth Howell Museum or grabbing one of those famous apple cider donuts at a local orchard, Essex honestly has something for everyone to enjoy. But, oh my God, the morning of June 9th, 2011, that peaceful town woke up to something straight out of a nightmare, an event that would change its history forever. What started as the sudden disappearance of a married couple quickly turned into a story that felt like it was ripped straight from a horror movie. That morning, 49-year-old Bill Currier and his 55-year-old wife Lorraine didn't show up for work. Bill and Lorraine were the kind of couple everyone trusted, steady, responsible, and well-known in their community. So when they suddenly stopped answering calls or messages, people got worried fast. Hours went by with no sign of them. Friends and family grew more anxious by the minute, and eventually, their coworkers decided to contact the police to figure out what was going on. When officers arrived at the Currier's home, that sense of unease only grew stronger. Everything about the scene screamed that something terrible had happened. First off, the garage door was wide open, which, might not seem like a big deal if they were home or outside, but they weren't. They were nowhere to be found. As the officers started checking the place, they found clear signs of a struggle, things scattered everywhere, and, bloodstains in several spots. Even worse, the phone line had been deliberately cut. Packaging from plastic zip ties and the couple's missing car only added to the growing suspicion that Bill and Lorraine had been abducted. As detectives began piecing everything together, a horrifying picture started to take shape. This wasn't just a random disappearance, it looked like the Curriers had been targeted in a carefully planned and brutally executed crime. But even with all the evidence, there were hardly any real leads. Where did the couple go? Who could have done something this monstrous? And most importantly, why? Because, honestly, Bill and Lorraine were just good, kind, intelligent people. Everyone respected them. Who would ever wish them harm? To answer that, we first need to understand who they really were. William Bill Scott Currier was born and raised in the northeastern United States and spent most of his life in Vermont. He grew up in a modest family, learning responsibility and independence from an early age. People knew him as quiet and thoughtful, the kind of guy who listened more than he spoke. Those qualities shaped who he was throughout his entire life, influencing both how he worked and how he connected with people around him. Bill was one of those people who took pride in doing things right, super hardworking, responsible, and totally reliable. Everyone at work trusted him because, he always showed up, did his job, and never complained. After finishing school, he went through a few different jobs, but they all had one thing in common: his dedication, his drive to help others, and that need for structure and stability in life. Eventually, he found his true calling in healthcare, working the night shift as an orderly in the anesthesiology department at the University of Vermont. His main job was to make sure everything ran smoothly through the night. Over the years, Bill earned not just a reputation for being dependable, but also deep respect from his coworkers for his humility, his kindness, and just being a genuinely good guy. You know how they say, as people get older, they either grow colder or more compassionate? Well, Bill was definitely the second type. It was during his time in Vermont that Bill met the woman who would become his wife, Lorraine. No one really knows the exact story of how they first met, but what's clear is that their bond only grew stronger with time. Their relationship turned into a long, loving marriage built on respect, friendship, and a shared love for the peaceful, natural beauty of Vermont. Lorraine Simon Currier was born on August 11, 1955, also in Vermont. She was known for being incredibly kind and caring, the kind of person who'd drop everything to help someone else. Her life was centered around family and friends, and she worked at Fletcher Allen Healthcare in the finance department. Her coworkers described her as warm, genuine, and always ready to lend a hand or offer a word of support. In many ways, Lorraine's life mirrored Bill's. She too grew up in a modest family, learning early on the importance of hard work, honesty, and appreciating life's simple joys. Outside of work, she loved spending time with Bill. The two of them were almost inseparable, always going on walks, hiking trails, exploring the forests and hills around their home state. That shared love for quiet, simple living in nature became the foundation of their relationship, making them a truly harmonious, loving couple. In Essex, Bill and Lorraine built a cozy, peaceful life together. They were well-liked and respected by friends, family, and neighbors, the kind of couple no one could ever see as being in danger, let alone the target of something violent. And that's exactly what makes this case so haunting. Why them? Why would anyone want to hurt Bill and Lorraine Currier? And most importantly, where were they? The official search for Bill and Lorraine was massive, but sadly, it turned up nothing. It started on June 9, 2011, and covered a huge area. At first, investigators focused on their home in Essex, but there were no signs, no clues, nothing that could point to where the couple had gone. And that's when things just got even more confusing. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and still, no real answers. Search teams made up of local police, the FBI, and volunteers scoured every possible direction: valleys, mountains, forests, even nearby urban areas. Officers spent hours and hours going through security footage, but not a single clip gave them any clue about what happened. With no evidence and no witnesses, the case slowly hit a dead end. It just went completely cold. But then, almost a year later, in March of 2012, something strange happened. A man named Israel Keys was arrested for the kidnapping and murder of a young woman named Samantha Koenig, whose body had just been found in Anchorage, Alaska. And the police had no idea yet that this case would become the key to uncovering what really happened to Bill and Lorraine Currier. See, whenever police catch a killer, they always check if he might be connected to other unsolved crimes. And during those interrogations, something totally unexpected came out. Israel Keys confessed to murdering the Curriers. And the more he talked, the more investigators realized, oh my God, this guy wasn't making it up. His story was too specific, too detailed to be some twisted fantasy. He shared information that only the real killer could have known, things like exactly how he kidnapped Bill and Lorraine, how he murdered them, and where he got rid of their bodies. He told investigators he had dumped them in an abandoned farmhouse right there in Essex.
What happened after you entered the house?
Oh, I told them right away what was going on.
Were they cooperative at first, at least?
Yeah. Pretty shocked.
I'm sure.
People never expect stuff to happen to them.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what you told them?
I just, it's like a blitz attack. You just make sure they know right away who's in charge and immediately tie them up, tell them what the rules are, that there's no talking unless I talk to them. They don't move unless I tell them to move, and did their hands behind their back and had them, pulled everything off the bed and got their hands and their feet together with cable ties, and then just started talking, like asking them one question after the other.
So they you don't have to tell them, but they know they're being robbed. That's what they think is happening. They're being robbed.
Well, they kept trying to ask me. I didn't tell them what was happening. They kept trying to ask me what was going on, and I never answered them. Really, it's just have to keep telling them to shut up and listen to me.
As for the motive behind these brutal acts, Israel said it was ridiculously simple. They were home. There was no bigger plan, no logic. He just wanted to kill for the feeling of it. The farmhouse he claimed to have hidden their bodies in was later torn down, so despite extensive searches in the area, no trace of the couriers was ever found. Honestly, I can't wrap my head around how you can tear a house apart and not find 2 bodies among the debris. I mean, look at the case of Joshua Maduk. He went missing for years, but they eventually found him in the chimney of a shack they were dismantling. The workers recognized him. So how do you not recognize 2 grown adults? Putting aside any questions about possible oversight by family members, the absence of their bodies deprived both families of a proper burial and closure. Even more unsettling is the fact that Israel actually confessed to killing many more people than just Samantha, Bill, and Lorraine. He later admitted to murdering several other people in different states, including New York, Washington, Vermont, and others. His confessions covered 11 lives across the country, but investigators believe the real number could be much higher. The reason? Israel deliberately kept details vague, probably because he liked keeping control. At first, that vagueness left a lot of cases unsolved. For example, he talked about killing a young woman on the East Coast in the early 2000s and said he dumped her body somewhere in the northern part of New York State, but her identity is still unknown. He also hinted that he killed another couple in Washington state years earlier and left their bodies in a remote spot. Unfortunately, Israel was methodical and, frankly, very crafty. He didn't have a consistent victim profile. He picked targets at random to avoid detection by law enforcement. He also traveled long distances all over the country, planning his murders in advance to avoid the mistakes people often make when acting close to home or on short notice. To make things easier for himself, he made and buried so-called kill kits across the country. Those kits contained weapons, cash, and various murder tools, all buried underground in different states, waiting for him until he decided to strike again. But, oddly enough, murder wasn't his only crime. He also admitted to bank robberies and even to arson. Often he'd steal money to finance his trips and stockpiles, which, not only helped him avoid detection, but basically gave him free funds to keep going. After his chilling confessions, the FBI launched a nationwide operation to find his buried kits. During that time, Israel willingly gave scanned hints about some of their locations, which led to a few successful finds, but also to many painful dead ends. One of those kits was found in the Adirondack Mountains in New York, another on Alaska. Because some of those kits dated back years, it was confirmed this wasn't a spontaneous impulse or a momentary fantasy. Throughout interrogations, Israel remained cold and detached, refusing to give complete details about his crimes, which, of course, left law enforcement and the public guessing about the true scale of his horrific actions. It was clear that Israel craved control. He toyed with investigators, refusing to fully cooperate, which is why many of his so-called kill kits were never recovered. In fact, it's still believed that several of his caches remain undiscovered to this day, buried somewhere across the country, silently waiting to be unearthed. Before we move on to the individual stories of his other victims, let's talk about Israel's trial because, in my opinion, it really sets the tone for everything that followed. Throughout every court appearance, he maintained that same chilling, detached demeanor, often smiling or looking calm and relaxed, as the charges against him were read aloud. Prosecutors were preparing for a high-profile case that could potentially link him to multiple murders, but Israel seemed far more interested in controlling the narrative than facing justice. He would occasionally share limited details with investigators about other killings, yet he deliberately withheld key information. While he provided vague accounts of how and roughly where some of his victims had been killed, he refused to name names or specify locations. Naturally, this infuriated law enforcement, and perhaps that's exactly what he wanted. It became painfully clear that Israel thrived on attention. He even demanded the death penalty, insisting on a swift execution rather than a drawn-out trial. In his typical, calculated fashion, he refused to let the justice system determine his fate. And yet, on the morning of December 2nd, 2012, Israel Keyes was found dead in his cell at the Anchorage Correctional Complex. Even in death, he followed his own rules. He ended his life using a hidden razor blade, then wrapped a bedsheet tightly around his neck. When guards discovered his body, they also found a suicide note filled with dark, cryptic ramblings. Unfortunately, it contained no additional information about his crimes or his victims. His death marked a chilling end to a life defined by cold precision and cruelty, a life that left behind far more questions than answers. The FBI and law enforcement agencies across the country were furious. They were now left with countless unsolved puzzles, but without the master of the game himself. Personally, I believe that may have been Israel's plan all along. By taking his secrets to the grave, he ensured a kind of twisted immortality, leaving behind an enduring mystery that would keep his name alive while denying the families of his victims any chance at justice or closure. Sadly, his death closed the door on numerous investigations that will likely remain unsolved forever. And worse, some of his victims' names may never be known at all. While Israel wasn't entirely silent about his crimes, the vague, fragmented hints he left behind offered only faint glimpses into a series of cold cases that eerily aligned with his movements and his brutal methods. And that's why now, we're going to take a closer look at several unsolved cases that are believed to be connected to Israel Keyes. It's incredibly important to honor the memory of those who lost their lives without ever getting the answers they deserved. And even though these stories aren't detailed, they still speak of real people whose lives were taken far too soon. So, let's go through a few disappearances that investigators strongly suspect were Israel's doing. Let's go back to 1996. Julie Marie Harris was a bright, determined 13-year-old girl from the town of Colville, Washington. On March 2nd of that year, she vanished while waiting for a ride to her local church. Despite her young age and the fact that Julie was a double amputee, she was an accomplished Special Olympics skier. She had lost both of her feet due to a medical condition and walked with the help of prosthetics. Tragically, about a month after her disappearance, those prosthetic feet were found near the Colville River. Despite the police's best efforts, no one could determine exactly what happened to Julie. Authorities couldn't even say for certain whether it was murder or an accident. The case eventually went cold until April 26, 1997, when her remains were discovered in a wooded area just a few miles from her home. Yet even then, the cause of death could not be established. It's worth noting that Israel Keyes lived in that same area. At the time, he was just 18 years old. When questioned about Julie's disappearance years later, after his arrest in 2012, he neither confirmed nor denied his involvement in her tragic fate. So, did Israel Keyes kill Julie Harris? Sadly, it's something we'll probably never know for sure. The next possible victim was Cassandra Emerson. Cassandra, or Cassie, as her friends called her, was a 2-year-old girl from the same Colville area. Her disappearance was anything but ordinary. She was reported missing after the burned remains of her mother, 9-year-old Marlene Kay. Emerson were found inside a trailer on June 27, 1997. Just like Julie's case, Cassandra's investigation eventually went quiet, but a year later, her remains were discovered roughly 13 miles from her home. Her death, too, remained shrouded in mystery. No definitive link to a killer was ever established. However, while in custody, Israel admitted that his first violent act had something to do with a trailer in Colville, strongly hinting at a possible connection between himself, Cassandra, and Marlene. Although authorities suspect he may have been involved in the deaths of all three women, Keyes never gave clear or definitive answers, leaving these cases open to interpretation. As a result, the families still haven't received the closure they desperately need. Sadly, it seems they never will. One can only hope that, over the years, they've at least found some measure of inner peace. Staying in Washington state, Israel admitted to at least 5 murders committed there. One of his victims, he said, was a man whom he killed and either buried or submerged in a lake near Nia Bay sometime between July and October 2001. Although a body had already been recovered from that lake, the death had been ruled accidental, so the case remained unsolved. He also confessed to a double homicide of a young couple between 2001 and 2005. He described in detail how he first beat the man to death, then strangled his female partner, and finally buried both in a remote location that has never been found. Between 2005 and 2006, Keyes claimed he killed 2 more people, 1 body, he said. He disposed of in Crescent Lake, Washington, while the location of the other victim remains unknown. Even though he admitted to these crimes, both cases remain officially unsolved. Moving further south, in Florida, Keyes is also suspected of involvement in a series of tragic events in 2007. Interestingly, the so-called Boca killer has never been officially identified, but he is believed to be connected to 3 horrific crimes near a shopping mall in Boca Raton. The first victim was 52-year-old Randy Mallet Gorenberg, a beloved woman, mother, and active community member. On March 23, 2007, she was abducted from the mall parking lot, and within an hour, she was found dead elsewhere, shot twice. The second attack happened on August 7, 2007. This time, a young woman with a small child was kidnapped from the same parking lot. The attacker wore a mask but was described as a tall, athletic man with long hair characteristics that closely matched Israel Keyes. This led police to seriously consider him as a suspect. Threatening the woman, the attacker forced her to withdraw money from an ATM before releasing her and her child unharmed. Her courage and willingness to testify helped police create a detailed description of the perpetrator, though the trauma she endured undoubtedly left a lasting mark on her life. Tragically, the third and final crime in this series ended in even greater heartbreak. On the 12th of December 2007, Nancy Bochicchio and her 7-year-old daughter Joey were found shot to death in that same parking lot. The senseless loss of a mother and child shocked the entire community, leaving family and friends in deep grief over this act of ruthless violence. Authorities also suspected that Israel Keyes may have been involved in the disappearance of 8-year-old Deborah Feldman, a woman going through a difficult period in her life at the time. Deborah was last seen on the 8th of April 2009 at her apartment in Hackensack, New Jersey. Like many others, she was a loving mother and friend who, despite personal struggles, remained close and caring to those who knew her. Sadly, she vanished without a trace, and her body has never been found. Investigators suspect Keyes' involvement because, after his arrest, federal agents discovered that he had frequently searched for information about Deborah's case on his computer shortly before being detained. Additionally, when shown her photo during interrogation, Keyes paused and then hesitantly said, "I don't want to talk about her right now." Although he never directly confessed, authorities believe he may have buried her near Lake Tapper in New York. Deborah's family continues to search for answers, cherishing her memory and hoping that one day they can find peace. Adding to this growing list of possible victims is James Lamar Tidwell Jr., also known as Jimmy. He was a 8-year-old electrician from Mount Enterprise, Texas, who disappeared under very mysterious circumstances. It happened on the morning of the 15th of February 2012, just after he finished a night shift. Jimmy was known as a hardworking and reliable man who took pride in his work and had many friends in his community. So when he suddenly vanished that morning, his family, friends, and co-workers were deeply concerned. Here, the story takes a chilling turn. Law enforcement later linked Jimmy's disappearance to a bank robbery the next day, the 16th of February 2012, in Ozell, Texas. The suspect, believed to be Israel Keyes, wore a white hard hat similar to the one Jimmy used at work. A dark-haired wig the robber wore strikingly resembled Jimmy's own hair. During questioning, Keyes made a disturbing statement. When asked about the wig, he said it wasn't synthetic, but made from real human hair. When asked where he got it, he cryptically replied, "Action Elise, you don't have to buy real hair to get it." After that, he refused to provide further explanation. Connecting all the facts paints a truly horrifying picture. Although Jimmy's body was never found and the full truth remains unknown, his loved ones continue to honor his memory, hoping one day to uncover answers. Jimmy is remembered for his dedication, kind heart, and positive impact on everyone around him. To conclude this list, I want to remind everyone, though each of these stories may seem small, that in no way diminishes the significance of the people behind them. Behind every story is a person who disappeared or lost their life. And behind each of those people are families, friends, and entire communities left in the darkness. Many of these cases remain unsolved, but investigators continue to pursue every lead and possible connection to Israel Keyes. Samantha Koenig, Bill and Lorraine Currier, and Keyes' other victims are remembered for the love, joy, and strength they brought into the world. Tragically, each of them was brutally taken far too soon. I sincerely hope that all the families affected by these events will one day find the peace and answers they so deserve. And on that note, friends, I think it's time to end today's video. Thank you for joining me today, I truly appreciate it. I'll see you very soon in a new video. Thank you, and goodbye.